A theme song for the Gear Podcast. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Troy Nababan.
My name is Leon Todd. It is fantastic to be here. We hope you've all been having a great time. How have you been, Troy?
Mate, life's good. Can you see me clearer than you've ever seen me before?
You are as though your arms are wide open.
With arms wide open under the streamlight.
That's one of the very first videos I remember seeing as a kid where I knew like what a guitar solo was, because there's a bit of a solo in that song, hey. And I just remember the whole video just thinking, that must be fun. Like whatever, you know, like there's the whole, they're in a field at some point and, you know, there's a lot of arms which are very widely open, but the solo in that, you know, not many songs had solos at the time. Good on you, Mark.
Now, back in those days, that was like Human Clay, I want to say 2001-ish, give or take a little bit. But in back in the olden days, they used to have advertisements for albums when they came out. Do you remember that on TV? So that was my exposure to Creed, because there was always that video that played, and immediately, kind of like now, when you see an advertisement for something, you think it's a big deal, so you have to get involved.
So I'll be the voisover. You be Scott Stapp. The award-winning album Human Clay, featuring the singles My Sacrifice.
I can't remember how My Sacrifice goes. They could do
My Sacrifice.
Do What If. Like, what if I... There's that one. That was cool.
The smash single With Arms Wide Open.
With arms wide open, under the sunlight.
Get Creed, Human Clay, from all participating outlets now for the low price of $41.99. You know, that was the ad. And it was, and the other one I always remember was Californication.
Oh, yeah.
When that came out, that felt like every 30 minutes there was the new album from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then the same song. So,
and the Newsboys, remember that one?
Yeah, we're getting into some deep cuts now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was Australian.
If you thought AFL was off-putting, then advertisements from the early 2000s.
And then Holy Grail playing as the AFL theme song.
Yep, footy song, the ultimate footy song.
The ultimate footy song.
But
what do you think? Just tangent on top of a tangent. What do you think is the greatest grand final performance ever?
Mate.
We all know it's secretly Meatloaf, but aside from that...
Oh, that sort of performance. I thought you were going to talk about the 2018 grand final.
It's obviously the 2018 grand final. Dom Sheed, and that Darty left straight through.
People were frothing that Robbie Williams one. Did you come to my place to watch the grand final last year?
Maybe. Did I?
I don't. Oh, yeah, because I made burgers. Remember I made burgers?
That's right. The burgers were the highlight.
But do you know what I remember is I was logged onto KO to watch it, but the pre-show thing... It just didn't play for whatever. I was on the wrong channel.
That's right.
So I missed Robbie Williams in his pink suit, which everyone's like, "Oh my god, Robbie Williams!" That was a bit unfortunate. I'll never go back and watch it as well, just out of protest. But
yeah, people who love Robbie Williams are an energy, and I can appreciate. I think in my later life, I can appreciate that what Robbie Williams does. Probably not everybody could do, but at the same time. He's the John Mayer of entertaining frontman.
Yeah, I like that song. I've played it a little bit. When a water falls, she offers me protection, a lot of love and affection, whether I'm right or wrong. That one, you know that one. I'm loving angels instead. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. His version of Better Man. Well, his song Better Man, is that the better Man than Better Man?
No, I probably like Better Man more. I'm not like a huge Pearl Jam guy, but it's a decent song. But I mean, the best better song is obviously Better by the Screaming Jets.
Correct. Don't we all love that one? Shout out to friend of the podcast, Steve Judd, for that one.
Yeah, I played that with him a few months ago, and he hates it, refuses to play it. And then I was just like, oh, the time was right, so he played it. But it was really slow. And I said to him afterwards, yeah, you played that really slow. And he said, yeah, it's because I just kind of forgot how it goes. I'm like, oh, yeah.
That's fair enough.
You played it fine. It was great.
That's absolutely fair enough. I feel like we're hitting all the spots.
Let me go back a little bit. I do have a new light. I'm really, really happy about that. It's the Lytra Glow. Thank you very much. I've closed the window, so set up. I actually also focused the webcam in a slightly better position. right next to my Prince pop vinyl, or my 3 Princes. And man, I'm just rocking. I'm just loving life. You know what I mean?
You're loving the life of a YouTuber, aren't you, Troy?
Oh, mate, I'm just getting ready to make those big dollars on advertising, and I don't know. Well, you tell me.
Hundreds of cents.
Hundreds and hundreds of cents.
Yeah, it looks good, and hopefully my audio is more acceptable this week with this appropriate microphone placement.
Sounds incredible.
Which you helped me set up. So with that, I'm going to just jump straight in before we go. Ragdoll has a new single coming out on Friday.
Really?
It's called Sky's Limit, Troy. Have you heard it?
I've heard it. I think I heard that song 5 years ago.
I think you've heard that song more than anyone else alive, seeing as you produced and mixed it.
That's correct.
And everything else about it.
Well, you listen to your stuff quite a bit once you do it, though. I reckon, not like in a sniffing your own farts way, but you know, you like to know it's good.
I like to make sure I actually know how to play the songs, and I like to try and practice singing harmonies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my excuse. It's just, you know, sometimes I like the songs. So we're playing in Melbourne next week as well. So we're finally playing Letting Go.
Really?
Yeah. And we were rehearsing it last night, and we all looked at each other and we were like, why haven't we been doing this song? It smashes.
That's the real groovy one, right? What's
the double kick one?
Oh, the fast one.
The one that you were recording until 5 a.m.
Oh wait, the 88.
Is that ADA on that song?
Yeah, ADA MP1 on that one.
So there you go. If anybody wants to actually hear my ADA recorded somehow, go and listen to the Ragdoll song "Letting Go." But yeah, we have a new single coming out called "Sky's Limit."
Finally,
and yeah, finally, we tracked it ages ago, and we
tracked it 5 years ago, sort of. So, are you okay for me to talk about the progression of the?
Mate, go straight into it, because it's fresh again for me, having had it on the shelf for so long.
Well, let's just briefly talk about some Ragdoll. We'll talk about some gear stuff on the track, and we can briefly talk about the mix if anyone's interested. But when I moved into this current studio that I'm in right now, that you can all see behind me, which was in 2018, started 2018.
Wow.
The first project that I did in here to test that the studio was actually functional and usable, and for drums in particular, was to do some Ragdoll songs, because, you know, me and the boys, you know, just get the crew in, the wrecking crew. They destroyed all my shit. That's why I call them the wrecking crew. No, not really.
Yep.
But we tracked the drums for that upstairs. The very, very first song we did was Rust, which came out a couple of years ago now, in 2020. Well, no, 2019. Yeah.
Yep.
But what we did was we tracked sort of 2 songs every couple of months for that year. So I reckon we ended up doing about 7 songs, I think.
Yep.
For drums over the course of that time. And then in between tracking drums, like Leon and I would put some guitars on bits. Like Leon would come to the studio on like a Friday morning usually, and we mess around. There's actually clips of those recording sessions on your YouTube channel, and coincidentally they popped up on my YouTube like homepage not that long ago. So I watched a few of those. So that's quite funny. And so we tracked a bunch of stuff, and then kind of, I wouldn't say it stagnated, but it was just a bit like, all right, like let's finally get this stuff finished. And so 2019, I remember like the first couple of months of 2019, we put bass on all the songs, and then we started to track vocals. So we did the vocals for Rust, and we did the vocals for this song, Sky's Limit.
That's right.
And then Rust came out, and nothing about this album was spoken about for 6 months. And there was obviously a few more songs that would have been recorded, but we just didn't quite get there. And then the start of 2020, what's the song called? Not King's Triple X, Follow the Leader. The working title, King's Triple X. But that came out when you guys were going on tour, I think, to Melbourne. In 2020.
Yeah, we did the East Coast. We did Melbourne and Sydney, and had a whole bunch of fun. And right as COVID just smashed down upon the world.
Yep. And basically, that was pretty much what happened. Like after that single came out, I think the project was sort of forgotten about a little bit. And I remember giving you some files and saying like, you know, go and change it or add some new guitars, or we'll sort of just see what happens. But knowing that this song, Sky's Limit, which was the working title, I'm surprised you kept it as the song title and not didn't change it, but that's neither here nor there really. It's just
Are you aware of the story with the title?
Yes, I believe I am. Would you want to tell it really quickly?
Yeah, I'll tell people about it so that people stop correcting me that there's no apostrophe in the song or anything else. So the very first incarnation of Ragdoll, when we were a 5-piece in 2009. Yeah, we played a show regionally, and Luke, who was singing at the time, got us this gig for the local races, and we went down. I think everyone went. Three of the band went down the night before. Then Ryan and I drove down the morning of the gig. So it was our first touring experience, if you want to call it that. You know, it was the first. I think it was a second or third show I'd ever, like, maybe the fourth paid gig I'd ever done in my life, kind of thing. So second or third gig we'd ever done with the band. I think we did like 2 cover shows or something like that before that. And anyway, so this was like, you know, it felt like you've gone bush kind of thing. It was pretty feral. It was pretty loose. And there was a little booklet getting around. The band didn't have a name at the time. It was this unnamed project. We were working on some original material, and we figured we'll do some cover gigs and make some money in the meantime so that we can then fund the original material. This little booklet getting around of, like, you know, these are the times for the races. This is the name of the meat pie stall. This is the local butcher. This is, you know, all the sponsors, the sort of things that you get in a regional community in Australia, this little booklet. And it said, live band, Sky's Limit. And we were like, who's Sky's Limit? And Luke just kind of said, they needed a name. So I just thought, you know, it's a new project and, you know, sky's the limit. So Sky's Limit it is. And that's how it was spelt in there. And we just kind of laughed about it. We were like, well, you know, is it Sky's the limit or is it Sky's Limit? Or it just became an in joke forever. Yep. So no one cares about your band name when you do these things either. So for whatever reason, that percolated up into my consciousness years later when I wrote that riff and did the demo for it. So the demo that I would have sent out to the guys would have had the name Sky's Limit, much like all the other working titles. Like Rust was a working title. Follow the Leader was called, you know, King's Triple X. There's another one called King 69, which we haven't released yet.
I wonder what sort of music that sounds like. My favorite working title was obviously The World You Gave Us was originally called Nut Meat.
Nut Meat. Yep. That was because we did a New Year's gig and like in Shark Bay or something. And we were bored and looking for something to do. And, you know, they have these tiny little stores and we're walking around this store, like basically in the middle of nowhere, they had these shelves stacked with this like meat alternative and it just said Nut Meat. So, you know, we're adults. Yep. We're adult children. We find those things quite funny. And I just, again, that must have been not long after that. It was still fresh in my mind where I wrote the riff and it's like, oh yeah, that one's Nut Meat. Just the funny part of that is people are always like, why is the song called Rust? You don't say Rust anywhere in it. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. You know, maybe it's part of the bigger aesthetic picture of it or something like that.
So, you should ask Sum 41, why does this look infected? Why does that have such stupid song names like The Hell Song? I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just a song.
Actually, we were listening. Ryan and I were driving down to Cam's to rehearse last night, and he didn't realize that very early live recording we did was on Spotify. The one that you recorded. Remember that one you recorded of us at the Rosemount?
Oh, yeah. That was like 2011.
It was actually a very important recording and video recording. The videos are online. We had someone come out and film it. But those recordings someone ended up seeing them in the States, and that's how we kind of, you know, that's how we made it, man. That's how we broke through to really the other side.
I was thinking about that the other day because there was a lot of spill in the vocal mic, as what happens when you do a live performance. There's just always drums and guitars bleeding into the vocal. And I had to pretty much automate like between every word, or every phrase at least down, just to get rid of all the spill. And it was a real pain in the ass, but it's just what you do. But I had a session that I did not that long ago. I tracked it in like 2021. It was like a live recording in the studio, but the singer was using an SM7, so the same mic that I'm talking into right now, but he sings really quietly when he plays, and he's really far back from the mic, like about this far, and singing,
so
singing.
Bleed.
It was just terrible amounts of bleed, and I was like, oh, it just kind of ruins the rest of the drum sound. Cause like the spill in general, having like room mics and stuff is one thing, but I just couldn't get the vocal out enough without it really drastically changing the drum sound. But with modern technology, Music Rebalance, what is it? I think it's called Music Rebalance RX, isotope plugin. Just use that, and it took ages. It took like an hour or something, or maybe not an hour, half an hour, 40 minutes or something. But I just processed it, hit go, and it just pulled everything out that wasn't vocal, and it was amazing. Oh, actually, I tell a lie. I think I pushed up the vocal a bit, and I pulled the spill down by like 6 dB, so enough separation. It just saved the track. It made it so much more listenable.
Awesome.
So all these things now that make life very easy for engineers.
The isotope stuff is, if you're doing anything with voice, it's worth the money. It's worth just as an essential tool. Especially like this room I've got, is noisy. There's the aircon, there's everything else happening. So being able to put like voice denoise on it for YouTube videos is great. But I digress. We were listening to that recording, and you know what Ryan said? He said, "Did you go and like record a second guitar on this?" And I remembered you telling me, you were like, "Oh, what I've done, I've got your Soldano, the mic amp here." Oh, yeah. And then I reamped the DI through 11 and delayed it slightly and just kind of panned them. And it sounds way better than I remember it sounding at the gig. So there you go, mate. So
it probably sounds a bit wider. I think I was a bit more obsessed with that. Certainly back then. I'm less worried about width in mixes now in my own stuff. Whereas I remember particularly back then, so this is like 2011, if I put on a track and it just didn't feel like it filled the speakers and the stereo spectrum enough, I was a bit like, oh man, it sounds shit. And also the metering always feels weird. It's like where you're going to put that single guitar, you're going to put it down the middle, you're going to pan it left and right. Nowadays, I just tend to like pan it. Like I'm happy to let it be panned to one side by like 40%. And then I usually just put some reverb and pan it to the other side. So that's the way I get a bit of faux width. Or I just sort of deal with it and live with it. But back at that point, trying to get the stereo widening stuff, or the tricks and whatnot, I was a bit more interested in that. Because like you can do, hypothetically, you could run it through your favorite stereo chorusing unit, your Dimension, or whatever. But it does sound
eventide pitch.
Yeah, but it does have that. Maybe the eventide would be slightly different, but like some of them, it does sound too obviously chorused, and I think that's a bit of an issue, particularly with heavy guitars. And then there's also an issue of like I don't really want a solo to sound big and wide as much as I like to fill it in that same stereo way. Maybe rhythm guitars, but I kind of like solos and like more single melodic parts to feel like they have a single place in a left-right thing. That's
rather than just giant dual mono, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's cool. That's on there. I haven't listened to that. I think it's really hard to listen to anything from that I did back then, to be honest, because it's hard to listen to anything I did like 3 weeks ago, to be honest. Well, like Sky's Limit. I don't know if I'll be able to listen to that.
Exactly. The big point about that was, aside to compliment you on getting bunter guitar tones, is that Pizza Box is on there, and that was another stupid working title that stuck. It's a song we never ended up releasing, but it's on there. So, and Slip Slip, there is a document of us doing it, and we're just having a laugh about it. So if anyone wants to go and listen to it, Ragdoll live at the Rosemount, 2011 proto band. I think we'd been a trio for a month or two, so it is what it is. Yep. And then, I mean, not long after that, we ended up having that first US trip, and what we did here today in 3 weeks with you,
maybe 4. That EP, right. That was like five songs.
5 songs.
It was pretty pushed for time, but it was about that long, I think.
I had to listen to that, and I did the title track side by side with Sky's Limit, and it's really interesting for me to, well, like obviously hear the progression in like what we do, but more so like for the way you mix and do stuff, and I'm going to call it like the dynamism of the mix, rather than it just be like, here's a big sound with some cool stuff. It's yeah, there's a lot going on with the Sky's Limit mix that I really like, and I really like how upfront the drums are, without being, there's everything louder than everything else element of mixing. But yeah, I'd be interested to know, like, what do you? Okay, I assume there's a lot of stuff that you do that's different, but say over the last 10 years, like, what have you learned about, like, say, how you would mix guitars and drums, and kind of, this is something I remember you saying, where it's like, if you have a song and it starts, you want it to get to a 10 out of 10 at some point, it shouldn't start at a 10 out of 10, it should start at a 7 out of 10. And then there's songs that start at 7 out of 10 and then they just go nowhere.
Yep.
So, like, how do you get that? I think that's the thing for me that I've become aware of, is it's like the way a track is mixed can reinforce the energy. Sometimes it can really make it, where the song has this intensity about it that can build and build.
I think a lot of that's in the production too. I think I was doing a track with some students on Monday. I think it's kind of fun to throw the kitchen sink at stuff. So to try and find your 10 out of 10, like maximum volume, if that's the last chorus or whatever, kind of maybe not do it first, but like spend a bit of time on that and then see what actually sounds cool. And then you can use those ideas earlier in the song and turn them on or off or up or down or whatever. And then it's like almost working backwards. That doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes it just, like with Sky's Limit, the approach to that was a little different than what I've done with you guys in the past, and actually kind of what I've done even over the last few years, because there's probably less on there than a lot of other songs. There's a lot of tracks and there's a bit of like, special sauce processing and whatnot, but it's not filled with a bunch of production elements and, impacts and reverses and rises and loops and samples and stuff. It's a bit more like Rock Band, I think, because it's a pretty easy crutch to make that I've do a lot where I make a normal rock band sound big and exciting by just like, throwing the kitchen sink at it, so to speak. So it's just trying to make like the ultimate, well, not the ultimate, make the 3-piece band that you guys are just sound as big as possible without it requiring like 20 tracks of guitars to do so. On Here Today, well, I'm not sure what order this is going to go at, but we spoke to Charles Scott last week, and what were we speaking at? What was the point of me bringing him up? There was something that he said.
That was an awesome episode, and if it's not out yet, and if it's coming out next week, depending on how we structure this, I think people are really, really going to enjoy it. It was such an interesting chat.
Fuck, I've completely lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
I think you were talking about mega tracking guitars.
Oh, mega tracking guitars. That's right. So I meant to mention this to him, but because it just came up, there's in like 2011, there was a guy that came and did a little bit of work at the studio, and as far as we could tell,
he who shall not be named.
Well, no, I mean, it doesn't really matter that much, but he, as far as we could tell at the time, had done a bit of work in America on some like modern rock songs, right? So with that, he brought with him a few ideas and like methods of working that was misinterpreted as being like, which happens a lot, as like, oh, this is how they do it in America, and this is how it's done, and you have to do your music like this. And so an example would be taking your single rhythm guitar part, and Leon, I mean your single rhythm guitar part, and maybe tracking it like 6 times with different guitars and amps, and at the very least you probably quad track stuff. So we might take like a Les Paul and do left and right of that with one amp set up, and then we do the same thing with like an SG or a Strat or 335, whatever, or a PRS. But because it was like trying to make it sound like this American sound of whatever we thought that was, or however we thought that was done, kind of like took that a bit more extreme. So yeah, maybe there was like 6 or 8 parts. There was stuff on that Here Today. We might have even done it on the song Here Today, where the chord itself was quite dense. So we split the chord up to be like the low strings, like the low, it was in drop D, so whatever, D, A, D. And then we do the higher chord part as a separate take. So it's effectively just like
doing a lot of that.
Yeah, you're just not flooding your input to your amp with like such wide bandwidth of signal, so you get more clarity on the high notes and a bit more chugga on the low notes. So, and you know, anyone that's tried to do that, like if you were to play like a 13 chord with a lot of distortion, it's pretty undefined unless you start to turn the gain down a lot.
Now, what is that phenomena, Troy, and why does that make a distorted guitar sound like a guitar, and why a kind of like, say, maybe not a proper multi-voice synth, but like, you know, you get a sampled distorted guitar note by note and play it on a keyboard, it doesn't sound like a chord on guitar, right?
Yeah, correct.
Sounds kind of weird. Yeah. And like a lot of those like Roland GK sounds have that thing. It's a lack of intermodulation distortion.
Yeah. I mean, that's funny you say that because you asked it like a question like I was supposed to answer, and I was like, oh shit, I don't know if I have the answer to this, but I thought, yeah, intermodulation distortion, I kind of had a feeling that's what it was. I'm glad you said it.
Well, the reason that came up was I bought that Psych-Fi like 6 individual pickups in one pickup with the breakout box, and I, you know, had all the 6 different inputs going into my Axe effects, where you can have, you know, single string processing, which is really, really fun. But then you can immediately flip, you know, if you set the preset up, you can go, oh, I'll sum all the strings into an amp. Then it sounds like a normal guitar. But if you like multi-out it to different things, then it has that weird like sampler sound about it. And it's because you literally have, you know, a single note being processed. It's like it'd be process some later versus some process, which is obviously in a non-linear system isn't going to be the same thing. So that that kind of thing, I can hear a bit more of that. There's an element. I remember someone saying, especially like on the song Here Today, ages ago, they were like, oh, is there like did you guys put synth on that? Because it kind of sounds like there's a few synth pads in there. And I remember thinking, no, but we did record. No, I'm pretty sure what it is, it's that like recording the low part of the chord and the high part of the chord on separate tracks. And it is clearer.
Yep.
It hits a little bit different. Yep. And I remember when we were recording Back to Zero, I think Shine has a lot of these like weird, you know, like I play a power chord on the low 3 strings, an open G string, and then like a really high note.
Yep.
Where we tried tracking it like kind of bit by bit. And I remember you saying, do you just want to play the chord?
Yep.
And we tracked it like that. And I remember going like, oh, you can do this. This is fine.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny you say it like that because you can do whatever you want. Like it's the biggest thing I say to students is like literally you do whatever you want, but that's taken a long time of me realizing that that's an option and not, like I said, someone comes back from America, which we think is like the promised land where everything is done incredibly well. And, you know, there's only one way of work. It's like, who fucking gives a shit? Just whatever sounds good. You can try it. It might work really well for you. It might not work well at all. You have to kind of take things in context and it kind of without going on another massive tangent, but it's really like when I teach, I talk about signal flow and gain structure a lot, right? And this signal flow thing is really important, like, and the gain structure of it, because once again, if you're overloading your input of your amp with like such wide band frequency, it's going to sound different. If you split it off, it's going to sound different. It's okay. They both work. Understanding how they actually interact, how the pieces interact with each other is kind of the only important thing that matters, because you can make that decision. And if you hear it and go, oh, it sounds this, but I want it to sound a different way, then you know roughly where you can change it in the signal chain. Probably like another example of that, I'm pretty sure it wasn't on Sky's Limit, but it was on Follow the Leader, because, which I want to talk about the guitar sounds on Sky's Limit in a second, but on Rust, up until that point, all of the Ragdoll songs that we've done have all been with real amps, including Rust. And then with Follow the Leader, I'm pretty sure that was all Axe FX 3. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, it was, because we built that like kind of amp blend preset in it.
Yeah, and same as Sky's Limit, that's also completely Axe FX. But when we brought that in to track Follow the Leader and we made that amp blend, I'm not sure if you remember this, but originally the way that the signal flow worked was that the guitar came in, it split off to 2 amps, which one was the Bogner, one was the Atomica, and then they come into the same cabinet.
Yes.
And then that was where the blend happened, like pre-cabinet, and then that goes to the output, which is fine. Like that, you have signal passing through the amps, but part of what makes the guitar sound was that cabinet interacting with that amp and that cabinet interacting with that amp. And by having the blend in front, it kind of sounded a bit like unnatural and a bit mushy sounding. So all we did was like put 2 cab blocks in and then like sum them after the cabinets instead of pre the cabinets. It sounded way better, I think, way clearer and more natural.
There were different cabs as well, which I think was important. I was really surprised by that. That was one of those like, well, this shouldn't, but it does sort of thing. So yeah, a lot of the time now, and people ask about a lot like, oh, what like dual amp blends do you recommend in the Axe? Like whatever you want, but I did this one thing once where it sounded better to have amp and cab, and sum them rather than just run them all through the same cab. It sounded, I guess, it just had more character doing it that way, which is pretty interesting. So it was probably like, what was it, the Uberschall model and like a V30 IR,
probably,
and then
I think it was Atomica.
Atomica and like a greenback IR. So and it was cool because it was like the IR we made of your recording cab.
Oh yeah.
Which is really, really nice. And then for Sky's the Limit, see, I obviously haven't opened the session back up and looked at it. Was it just a pair of guitars? Just double?
Yeah. So there's 3 tracks on it, like total, 3 guitar tracks. No, 4. Yeah, one's a solo. So I always track the DI along with the amp. We had routed it at the time, I believe, so that the Axe Effects gave us a clean, like unprocessed DI signal effectively, as well as the amp. So on 2 different outputs. But it's just left and a right for the rhythm parts. And then there's an overdub part in like the choruses it's in the first verse. It's a bit more ambient sounding. And then that reappears towards the end.
Good old stock rotary speaker in the Axe. It's just such a thing, man. Like it's we call it, Cam described it as the sound of paranoia.
Yeah.
Like you just put that on and it's like, because it's on, I think the end of Rewind Your Mind, there's one of the chords I play. If it was in standard tuning, it would be the open B string and then a 5th fret on the G. So it's like B and C together, like a semitone apart.
Yep.
But I remember on Rewind tracking just playing the like C, B, underneath it is just this layer of like, droning dissonance in there. So yeah, that and the like kind of stereo processing you put on that, I think makes that verse really, really come in and sound interesting.
That's on, are you talking about on Rewind or on Skies?
On Sky's Limit, yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty simple for the guitar tracking. And then you had emailed me a solo that you did at home and just chuck that in on top.
I can't remember doing.
Yep. Well, it was so long ago, man.
I obviously did it, but it was, if we track the rhythm parts in 2018, 2019, I think I did the solo like sometime during COVID.
Maybe, but I feel like it was actually, well, I could probably find the file there and tell you, but
yeah, right.
I mean, to go way back on this story, the track was pretty much done in like May 2019. Like in terms of what was recorded, apart from that solo, because that wasn't in the session, but it was like you'd emailed me the thing or put it on Dropbox, that solo. But yeah, the rest of it was basically like they're ready to go and just sat on the hard drive for 4 years until sort of decided to finish it off. So it was really interesting because, talking about like Here Today and how that compares to Sky's Limit, thinking about opening up the session and how I recorded it in 2018, 2019 versus how I do stuff now is like super different.
Right.
And I really, like, I struggled to get a certain sound in that track that I really wanted to hear, because knowing that I'd actually recorded it in a certain way like so many years ago, where like Rust was really tough to mix. I did a lot of shit on that and stuff that I haven't really pursued afterwards, because I was trying to get a certain sound out of it and it was pretty cool and it worked. But yeah, like listening to some of the roughs of Sky's Limit from like 2019, they actually sound okay. They sound like reasonable, but the drum sound, like the individual elements of the drum sound and everything, I'm like, as I mixed it in 2023, I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, it would have been better in hindsight to just have mixed it and finished it back then and had just while I was in that headspace of kind of understanding how I'm going to use the elements. Because it's really difficult to look back. Well, I find it difficult on my own stuff to look back because I'm always trying to make it better and evolve the stuff. Probably like the way I do stuff now makes sense. I think I'm on a pretty positive trajectory of ideas, but it's taking a while. Like to answer your question of like, stuff that happens now that's different. Back when we did Here Today, like we mixed that on an SSL console and we did it relatively quick because we mixed that whole EP over like maybe 2 nights or 3 nights. I don't remember now. Maybe 3, but it was nights because that's when we could get the studio for a bit cheaper. So we went in like starting at about 7 PM and finishing up about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and did that 3 nights in a row. So it was quick. It was a lot of over processing stuff, I think, and a lot of vocals parts, like vocal overdubs and guitar overdubs, and trying to manage all that. Probably not in the clearest way. And to be fair, I don't think I've done that very well in general over my mixing career. I'm still working on it because I get so like interested in the sounds that I add in that sometimes they're just like, it's really cool and I can't let go of it and can't trim shit out. But that's my own personal battle. Within Skies, like I'm pretty sure there's not many vocal tracks in there. Oh no, there is quite a few vocal tracks. I take that back. It's really just the one lead, a little bit of double, and a couple of moments where there's harmonies in the choruses and stuff. There were some bits that we recorded which ended up getting cut. I was able to be a little bit more like savage with that. So the guitar parts in general weren't very complicated. So that was what it was. The bass parts pretty much were what they were. I have previously would add synth parts in and production parts. Didn't really do that. So most of the effect stuff is just trying to throw shit on vocals, which in terms of what the lyrics were and the subject matter were, it felt a bit like more appropriate to try and, throw delay parts in or chorus parts or whatever, phases. So that was kind of fun. I think it's still, it's weird. I don't want to say it could have been better with more time because there was plenty of time that was spent on it. But I think it's just like, for me and the stuff that I do, I just try and take a few lessons over a song once I finished it and take it to the next project. It's pretty much what I've done with you guys for the last 11, 12 years, where I'll use you guys as the experimentation board, and then I'll just take those things that I learnt to the next project, and usually they sound like kind of cooler, and then you guys will come in for the next thing, and I'm on to the next way of working. And
I mean, I certainly enjoy that. I feel like, the very first set of recordings we did with Blair and Anthony, I just didn't know what was up. So I was like, well, you guys know how to do this. So I'll just sort of play the parts and tried not to be super interested in, I just basically didn't say anything where there were parts in certain songs where I was like, oh, I know how to do this at home, or in 11 with mod delay.
Yeah.
But I just shut up the whole time, and I wasn't super happy with the end result, where there were things where it's like, oh, that's meant to have a rhythmic delay on it, and just for whatever reason. So I think by the time, we did Here Today with you, it kind of started off as we'll just kind of track it. And then there was definitely a day where the fuzz pedals came out and the weird stuff came out, and that was
really fun, that stuff.
Yeah, just the lights went on and we just went to town having fun. It's still one of the most fun things I think I've ever experienced with music. Was it was really, obviously really stressful, but specifically the tracking guitars, getting cool sounds, it felt like that moment for me in my life where it's like, I can just leave all my preconceptions about what you're supposed to do behind and try to just lean into the vibe, as nebulous as that sounds.
Well, that's true. I think it's important to just remember it is creative, and creativity is usually fun, supposed to be fun, should be fun. But yeah, that was a really fun session because we were pretty young. We were like early 20s. So it wasn't like, you know, I remember like doing late nights at your place trying to track these guitars, and we just kind of, just fucking around. And it wasn't like, oh, I've got to go home so I can change nappies and get the kids up in the morning. So without that stress and pressure, it was just a really good time to learn. I think like, even the last night that we did in terms of like finalizing all the parts, making sure that everything was tracked and going through it. I think it was like you, me, and Cam at your place till about like 2
o'clock. Did we get on like chat roulette or something?
We got on chat roulette because that was a thing. And that was really funny and silly, and it was just learning. But I think like in terms of other lessons from that, I definitely try and keep sessions that I do like not stress free, because it can't really be stress free, but keep it like creative and open. Yeah. And you know, really it's just like not looking at the clock's really important, and it helps with keeping the vibe, as you say. And I hate saying that, but it kind of comes out of my mouth a lot these days. But it's kind of the best way of describing it, you know. You
want some of that Craig McRae energy in your session.
Exactly. So, in terms of the track, a couple things. Sorry.
Before you dive into that, I don't think I've even mentioned this to you. Obviously, you know, you recorded the vocals, so we went through it with a fine-tooth comb. But did you pick up on? And I can't remember if this was the initial intention, but like in my head, it's always been about this topic. Like, what's the song about to you?
I just always thought it was about doing drugs, but I don't know. What is it?
Lucid dreaming, but
drugs. Okay, yeah.
It could be as well. You know, for me, because anyone who knows me well enough will know that probably every couple of weeks I have these insane, vivid dreams, like, you know, loaded with symbolism and things like that. I think a big part of how I deal with everything that happens in my life is like, I'll just dream it out, which sounds insane. For example, Troy, the other night, 2 nights ago, I had a dream I was on a water slide playing my yellow RG 550 and, you know, going down the water slide. I must have like, you know what it was? Because I'd watched the Eric Bugenhagen video where he's going down a water slide right before I went to bed. So there's that ticked off. Thank you to everybody for letting me work out my symbolic dreams. But then I like splashed into the water and it felt like there was something in my mouth, and I started pulling this string out of my mouth. And the more I pulled, the more came out, but it was fluoro yellow like the guitar. So I don't know.
Sounds like a good dream.
I have lots of dreams where my teeth fall out sometimes when I'm stressed, but then when I'm not stressed, dreams where I fly all the time.
That's
and I was describing that to someone, they were like, God complex. I was like, oh yeah, just like, haha, I can fly. Or I know how to fly, but I have to like, I like, hey, everybody, check. Like I'm at a gig or something, like now when I do the solo, I'll just like hover, and everyone's never impressed with the guitar playing, but they're impressed with the gravity defying stuff. So that's kind of where that comes from. I think a lot of the stuff, you could interpret it as drugs. You know what? You can interpret it as anything you like, because that is the point, that they'll listen. That's
the cop-out answer.
That's the cop-out answer. I mean, I had somebody write to me when we put Rust out, just like dissecting why the lyrics should be different. And I think my final response were like, sounds like you've just written a song. Go and record it, bro. You know, like, not, I don't know. There's this thing where it's like, hey, I appreciate somebody taking the time to listen to the song, but, you know, you forget that maybe when people record things, they make creative decisions for a reason.
Yep.
And even if you may not be able to see the meaning in it, maybe it really means something to the person who's done it. Not that it makes it better or worse, but that's such a strange thing to me, like being like, oi, Steve Vai, you know, in For the Love of God, the second one where you do a slide should have been a bend. Sounds better, you know?
Good on
like,
you.
I'm sure he's had lots of people tell him that as well, because Steve Vai fans would say that. Like, why would Steve Vai make this choice?
Yeah.
You're missing the point.
Yeah. I think, I'm with you, basically. Your creativity, like creating music and that stuff, it's really fascinating. The way people approach it. For me, it's always just like, just do the best you can.
Yeah.
At the time that you're there.
There's a Troy Naberband concept I'd like to introduce to the audience. It's called the Room of No Consequences. That's really what that's recording music should be like.
Yeah, like it should be. It's the session I did with some of my students on Monday, I was trying to tell them it's like, you just try stuff. Like, who gives a fuck if it sounds good or bad? Good or bad's irrelevant. Like, is it fun? Does it sound different? Does it actually make you consider the music you're doing in a slightly different way that makes you go like, oh, maybe that's terrible, but I never would have thought of this other thing had I not gone down this path. Like, that's just, it's like saying winning or losing, mate, doesn't matter. It's just like wrestling. The results. You
know what it is, Troy? It's about the process.
It's about the process. It is. I actually think that's more important.
It's a cliche for a reason. Yeah, it really is. And I mean, the thing that got me interested in writing music and recording music was reading about all my favorite bands and, how they did stuff, whether it was, Led Zeppelin did their first couple of albums in like no time. And so when it came time to do 4, they like got a mobile recording studio and a cool old house and just like hung out and went pastoral, and just like that. Clearly they were in a position where, literally they were living in the room of no consequences with their entire, like, you basically don't have to worry about anything except doing this. So why not make it a pleasant experience? Or I remember watching Some Kind of Monster when I was in high school and seeing like how much the band got in their own way when trying to record some stuff. There's another great Troy Navaban quote, which is rock music shouldn't be hard.
All these things I didn't know I realized I said, but there you go.
Maybe you just introduced me to them. I think it was along the lines of, you go in, you have fun, but at the end of the day, you're recording a rock song. It's a bit of a known quantity. Like, you're not reinventing the wheel. So don't worry about the fact you're not reinventing the wheel. Just have some fun.
Yeah. Get your ideas across. Just do it. As I said, do the best that you can. I mean, also don't nothing's ever perfect. You just fucking, just do the best you can.
Hey, in the words of Jeff Tate, I want to be the best I can.
I was going to sing it, but I won't do that. Yeah. So, man, this is a cool discussion about this song. It'd be cool. I'm looking forward to people being able to hear it. I mean, it's just nice to see another Ragdoll song in the world after 3 years.
Yeah, another child is born.
4 still on the hard drive somewhere that may or may not ever see the light of day.
And hey, like without like copping out and making excuses, since we did like Rust, basically, Ryan's had 2 kids, and I won't go into details out of privacy, but like, one of his other kids got really, really sick. And for me personally, it's like, actually having the time where you go like, oh, you were so in your own head about this small portion of your life. It's this big in the context of your life, but you're making it out to be this massive thing, and like getting a bit of perspective on sort of what's important in life. And like, you've had 2 kids as well. A lot of my friends have, had children or had like significant things happen to them, whether it's, triumph or tragedy or, health related stuff. And, you just kind of get into your 30s and, shit happens. So having, and obviously COVID was that on a global scale. So having all those things and actually sort of getting to the point where you like feel good about, oh, cool. It's not just a chore to put music out. It's like, oh, you can feel good about it and you can enjoy it and you can enjoy the process. So yeah, it's having the perspective on it where it's like, don't have to do this. So if you're going to do it, may as well be enjoying it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely.
Anyway, I cut you off before about you're going to dive into more stuff about the song, and
probably won't dive in too much. I mean, like I'll just say, we'll talk about a couple little things with it. We are the gear podcast, so we need to get into some gear stuff too before the end of the episode. But yeah, I love having a conversation like this because we probably would have had similar conversations to this a long time ago. But it's just something I always enjoy with anybody. I just find it fascinating, the nature of like creating. So anyway, in terms of the track, before we sort of move on from it completely, because as I said, it'd be nice for everyone to hear it. The guitars on it. Do you remember what So it's all Axe FX 3. Do you remember what amps they are? What
I feel like it's Recto 1 Red. I feel like that was a real Recto song. That's about all I remember about it, and probably boosted with something. Probably it's my black PRS, the single cut. I do remember when we were tracking it, especially in the verse, because the riff has the way I was playing it was a bit Mr. Roboto, and not the Stick song, but just sound like a robot. I remember you going, there's often these times for me tracking with you where it's like, if I'm struggling with a part, you can do the play it the way so-and-so would play it.
Oh, yeah.
And the verses in particular, like, man, just think about it. What would Nuno do? How would Nuno play it? And it was sort of like, oh yeah, just do that. So yeah, it's kind of, I mean, the riff doesn't sound like an extreme riff, but in my head, in that verse, I go,
the second verse, yeah.
Here's the Nuno part, like give it a bit of swing, give it some more attitude, let it sound like, dirty rock guitar. So I remember that aspect of it. The worrying memory blip of doing the solo. Because I remember you pulling it in and going like, this is a solo. This is good. So I've had to go and learn it. And yeah, it's been like that's always such an interesting part of the thing where it's like, oh, cool. I think on a lot of the earlier stuff, there was a lot of like, I'd come in with something prepared and you'd be like, cool, that's a bunch of exercises. Now actually just play a proper guitar solo and then I'd be able to play it, or you'd say like, cool, what would, do some George Lynch here, like over the last solo or something, last chorus or something. And, just like, here's a really rough vibe to get you motivated, go and do it. So I think it's pretty simple. It was just kind of me, because Back to Zero has my old Recto on it a lot. So it was like,
she's that.
Just kind of that sound.
I'll just interject for 1 second. In terms of the player solo and make it not sound like a lot of guitar exercises, this is all just do what I say, not as I do, because I'm really good at being picky on other people's guitar playing. But if anyone ever hears me do a solo, I've got like 4 licks, maybe 3. They're not really very good, and they're always pretty sloppy, and I always hit wrong notes. But at least I've listened to enough like George Lynch and Nuno Betancourt where I can tell when other people are not sucking, but when I want to hear something different. And I think like the idea of don't play a guitar exercise, like that really comes from Anthony. So like he's Anthony Cormican, like just incredible guitar player, and mentored me a lot over like when I was sort of first starting out. But he could do anything, and then when guitar players would come in that could just rip, it's just a comment he made. It was like, yeah, I mean, they've got all the chops, but it's not really a melodic solo. It's like there's a lot of stuff you can say about Steve Vai that is positive and negative, but if you listen to something like Passion and Warfare, like the notes are really considered, the melodies are considered, and it isn't just like, not even just playing guitar exercise, but just like whittling over a backing track. That's really lame. Like anyone can sort of do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of guitar players from that era, I'm not talking about the George Lynches necessarily. I mean, some of the other, let's just say shrapnel guitar players.
Oh yeah.
They're like, they've got so much facility, but they don't do anything like memorably musical with it. Apart from being like, your eyes go so wide because like, oh my God, I can't believe they can play that quick. But it's like, oh, who cares? Like you can't hum that melody. But like the Steve Vai thing, the Joe Satriani thing, that to me is what makes guitar playing and guitar solos interesting. So yeah,
because if you're gonna do the whittle, you have to be better than Yngwie. Like that's the standard, because he just shows up and just like blasts, and it's just incredible. And he's got that vibrato and
that touch, He's the best at doing that. Like, really, there's no other. You're right. I've never thought of it just like that, but he plays the same 5 licks over everything, and it is still so much fun to listen to, unless it's his blues album.
Oh, yeah. And unless it's him playing drums and singing, because whatever album that was that he put out, which was him doing everything, is one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. So, Yngwie, just don't, mate. Just like, call up someone who can sing, be nice to him for an afternoon. It
has to be an afternoon.
Not even an afternoon. Just just don't even have him around. Just have him do it. So because look, I have to interject with some Yngwie. He played bass on most of his albums.
Oh right, I didn't know that.
He's like, he's a proper bass player, and obviously he can do the thing. But yeah, and I've seen videos of him playing drums where he's just like double kickering. You know, I'm sure if he wanted to devote his life to playing drums, he would be really good.
Yep.
He's just kind of one of those guys, and he seems like he has heaps of fun when he does it. But I think it's Fire and Ice. That's the album. I don't think he plays bass on that. And it's like it kind of sounds like a proper band. Right. Is it Fire and Ice or is it the one before that? What's the one that has Making Love and Bedroom Eyes? No, it's not Fire and Ice. I'm wrong. Whatever one it is, the one that came out after Odyssey and before Fire and Ice, I can't remember the name. Eclipse. That's the one. It's just really cool. Like it sounds like a rock band playing with this insane guitar player on it. So that's my favorite Yngwie album. And, you know, he still does his thing on it, but it's just kind of like, I don't know what was going on in his life at the time. It's like he gave the other band members 5% more freedom to actually just play. So yeah, I mean, it is. It's just like there's anytime you hear him, you're just like, there it is. You know, he's the big guy in the room.
Yep. Still the loudest experience of my life, hearing those kick drums at the start of an Yngwie Malmsteen concert. I can close my eyes and take myself right back there to 2006. It was a very good time. So anyway, getting back onto topic.
So guitar solos and exercises, and know, I think I still, if I ever do that, I have students come in and they want to record songs they've written, and we do little demos here. The way I produce them doing a solo is the same way you would do it to me, where it's like they'll do it and I'll be like, really, really good. All right, play it again. But that first lick, do something a little bit more, like give me some extra spice on there or something, like just try something, and you end up sort of deconstructing the whole solo. And they're like, whoa, I didn't know I could do this.
Yeah, I've done that a lot with players before. It's kind of it's almost something like when you start doing it, you're just like, ugh, I don't want to do this. It's like really off-putting.
Here we go.
And then once you get into it, it's really inspiring and fun. There's been times with you that's been not really like pulling teeth, but I just never forget the one, like the Heaven Above one, where it's just like, just fucking play the solo, I'm done. And it was like 50 something takes later. That was quite funny. So
yeah, I still listen to that and I'm like, and this is the one this you could do. All right.
There's so many other takes, man. You probably have a session. You can go back and find a different one.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a bit of a learning experience for me, where it's like, okay, just be more good next time.
Yep. So back to the guitars. So I think I've said this to you, but I'll say it to everybody. It was a lot of EQ on those guitars to make them sit in the track.
Yeah, right.
A lot.
Awesome.
Probably the most difficult thing of the whole track was trying to mix those guitars into the track. And I only have myself to blame because I was here dialing in the tone and you were sitting next to me. I can't say, oh, fucking Leon sent me these guitar tracks and they sound like shit. There's no excuses. Like I was here and they were really tough to work. What was specifically really tough was the 3.1K ringing that I always talk about on this, and I talk about to a lot of other people. But there's something like a 9 or 10 dB cut at like 3.1K, like quite a wide bell cut, what I had done over the course of mixing these guitars, and we probably had a little discussion about it.
The phase thing with EQ, right?
Yeah, so I always find in these guitars, there was actually, I ripped it off Hardcore Music Studio, like one of these videos on how to mix guitars, and you've sort of like done similar things on your videos, I believe, but he has a video where he's like, oh, this is how I mix heavy guitars, and it's like a high pass filter, like 130 hertz maybe, up as high as that, low pass filter to get rid of like some of the high end stuff, and then he's like, there's always a ringing frequency around 3K, 5K, somewhere in that vicinity, and it's all true. Like that's all completely fine and a reasonable approach to mixing like heavy distorted guitars. So, excuse me. The one thing on this track is I don't believe I high pass the guitars at all. I'm trying just to let all the low end come through. It's something that I believe I did that on this song. But yeah, I'm just trying to like I feel like sometimes guitar sounds that I get end up like ultra sterile, and I think it's because I do that thing of that we always talk about when it comes to mixing guitars of like, oh, get rid of the low end because it means there's more space for the bass. Where it's like other engineers that I really like, when I look at their sessions, like there's fucking no high passing on this, and then you do it, and it's like, oh, it actually is not really contributing that much, and sometimes that subbiness, it's like low enough where it's not really fucking with the bass. It's actually just kind of like helping support the fundamental tone of the guitar.
Yeah, interesting.
So I'm working on that. Like it's always time and place. Always time and place. But I think on that one there was no high pass filtering. But and same as I don't think there might have been a little bit of low pass filtering, but really the issue was that 3 point something K where I kept doing, I use FabFilter Pro Q3, right? So anyone that has that plugin is familiar with it. You can get really surgical with the cuts and boosts. You can also solo the bands. So you can just hear the whistle. So if you're listening to a sound and you go, oh, there's this weird ringing frequency, what is it? You can hit the solo and then sweep around till you find it exactly. The more traditional way of doing it would be to take like a filter, boost it, and sweep it around so that frequency kind of rings out at you. But yeah, I did that. I soloed it. I just found within the space of like 3 to 4 kilohertz, a lot of issues, a lot of problem frequencies. And I just kept cutting them out until it sort of sounded okay. But did we talk about the like phase stuff on this?
I think very briefly, but yeah, you kind of mentioned it's like obviously when you have a filter or you have a plugin, there's going to be latency introduced to process it. It's not instantaneous.
Yeah. And so
you need that plugin delay compensation. And
well, there's that, but there's also the amount of phase distortion that happens when you have a filter on an EQ engaged, which is not nothing. So you can do this if anyone's keen to try this out or wants to look into it more. Dan Worrell, like he does a lot of the FabFilter videos, but he also has incredible videos about this. He uses the Plugin Doctor plugin quite a lot to demonstrate it. But you can, with the Plugin Doctor, like just say you grab 1 kilohertz on the FabFilter and you boost it up, the Plugin Doctor will show you like, okay, what is the EQ doing? Like, is it actually doing what it says when you boost 1K, which it does? But then you can flick to the phase and see how much phase shift there is when that is turned up. And what ends up happening is depending on the width of your like EQ, like the Q value, and the boosting cut, it will reverse phase frequencies around it by a certain amount of degrees. And it's worse the narrower the band is, I believe. Right. So it's more harsh or
inversely proportional to the Q.
Yeah. So what that is to say is like, if you've got a lot of frequency bands in a close proximity to one another, there's also a lot of phase shift happening within that frequency range. So with me, as I was EQing these guitars, I was like, man, I've got like 4 EQ bands, like all here, and they're all pulling out little frequencies. Is this really the best way of doing it? And I ended up just getting rid of all of them and just doing one big cut. And that sort of made it sound a little bit nicer to me because I might have been imagining it, but it just felt like stuff was sounding a bit weird with the over EQing.
It starts losing some power or something.
Yeah, and you can put that plugin, the FabFilter, into different modes as well. You can do it in like linear phase or natural phase, and that had its own like series of good and bad things to do that. Yeah, doing that massive cut made a pretty big difference. The single one, I still had to do a little trimming, like mid-range of the guitars and whatnot, but that was kind of the killer. But I said I'm only to blame for terrible guitar sounds. Not terrible guitar sounds. It wasn't that for...
Mate, it's just not you. It's both of us.
I did consider, because there's a DI signal there, I considered reamping that either through amps or getting you to reamp it through an Axe Effect sound. But I kind of just... I don't know. Part of me sometimes wants to just commit to what's there, you know?
Yeah.
And I tried to do that as much as possible. So yeah, it kind of was what it was. I would do it differently if we were to do that song again. Maybe different amp sound, maybe do it with real amps because I'm just so into that at the moment. Maybe try different impulse responses. Who knows?
And you have the setup to do it as well.
Yeah. Which, I mean, not to go back too much, but this entire setup that I have now with the amp switching and stuff is really just an evolution of what we did like in your basement there. Like 12 years ago. So it's kind of funny that that's still the way I like to do stuff. So Yeah, man. It's the rest of that mixing in terms of guitars was pretty straightforward. I think there's a bit of the what is it? The IK Multimedia Sunset reverb on there because I like that awesome. A lot for guitars. Yeah. And yeah, otherwise I probably don't. I think.
Did you do anything extra on the solo? Like, what did you put on that? Because I was listening to it the other day and I was like, this sounds lush.
I don't think so. I reckon if anything, it would have been. I reckon you sent me 2 versions of it. You sent one with effects and one without effects.
That sounds about right.
It's probably just the effect version. There's no editing on that at all.
That's probably just my Axe Effects Live preset then.
Yeah, it was cool. So I probably just still needed a bit of tweaking around that 3K mark.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, like I used use reference tracks when I mix. I sort of went away from it for a little bit because I found I was like reinventing other people's mixes or trying to, rather than like just doing whatever I thought sounded the best. But I did use a bit of Alter Bridge as a reference on that for the reason of like, well, I want to hear what Recto's like good Recto tones sound like in this sort of arrangement, and so that felt okay. Had a bit of Ghost in there as well because that's different, very different sound. But I was just curious as to how it sort of matched up. And
I remember when that latest album came out, you messaged me and you're like, I think these are some of the best guitar sounds that I've heard in ages.
I still think that they're definitely not what your guitar sounds like on the track that is coming out, but it's just Andy Wallace, man. Like they just sound so good. It just sounds like rock music. Like it's so silly to say that all the time, but it's like it doesn't feel that special in, it just sounds so appropriate. It sounds like so transparent.
Yeah. You don't go, oh, that's interesting. It's just there.
Yeah. So I really, really like that. I like that the last couple of Ghost albums a lot, but yeah, the one from last year is just awesome. So yeah, I think Kaiserion, that's the one I used as a reference.
Yeah. Frederick Ackerson on lead guitar on that?
I think so, yeah. I don't know what he used for guitars and amps and stuff. Yeah, he's into Synergy stuff though, I think for live. Yeah. So
maybe we could get Frederick on one day.
Mate, the list of people that we want to have on this thing is growing by the week.
It's growing ever longer. But yeah, I remember because Elspeth is a huge Ghost fan, loves them. And she got that as soon as it came out. And she was listening to it and I was like, what's going on with who's playing guitar on this? It was like it's been so long since I've had a moment like that. I was like, they've got someone really good on this.
Yep.
And I looked it up and I was like, Frederick, of course. Like, yeah, he's an overlord of guitar, you know? So he's got that touch on there, which just, it kind of elevates it a little bit for me. I really, really like it. So what did you use for like the vocal sounds? Because there's some cool like reverb and delay throws and there's I really like the just lushness of it.
I don't think it was anything too fancy. I think it's probably just a few Echo Boy things, I've got the Fab Filter Timeless, which I used for some of the more like slightly weirder sounds, like the detuned delays and stuff.
Yeah, right. I really like that plugin.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a bit funny though. I don't know if I like the user interface on it as much as I do like Echo Boy, but it might just be because I'm so used to Echo Boy.
It's a really good deep dive delay. I find if I'm like if I'm using delay and I'm tracking with it, so I'm using it on like the Axe, or I'm recording a demo with a delay pedal or something, I use it differently than if I was going to put it on a mix, and I surf presets in plugins.
Yep.
You know, that's close enough. That'll do. Adjust the mix and that's about it. So, but yeah, I've used Timeless a lot.
I think with
YouTube stuff.
With the presets and that, there was I don't remember who it was now, but I saw like a preset expansion pack for that, like a paid one, and the presets that were in the pack were awesome. Like,
yeah, right,
probably better than what is in the plugin stock, because the stock ones are cool, but it's like I don't like with Echo Boy as a interface and whatnot. If you want it to sound like a DM2, you just click the button that says that. And if you want to make it sound like it's just a standard tape delay or whatever, it's just really easy. Whereas it kind of feels like you need to do a little bit more work to get those in the timeless plugin, but you can surf presets and find something that has that in the title and then use that as a starting point. But I kind of just wish I can go bang, like that's the thing. But in terms of the ability to tweak it, I mean, you can modulate anything you want with it and duck stuff, and it's really, really cool. It's just, I mean, I think I asked this of Charles, like when you get a new piece of software or a new piece of hardware, it's like the learning curve of it is sometimes a bit of a pain in the ass. You know, like you kind of need to spend the time to read the manual for it or watch the YouTube videos or whatever. And when you're trying to just maybe not do something quickly, but work efficiently, it's a little tough. So, you know, once you learn a reverb plugin or a compressor or whatever enough, it's just easy to grab that than go to the latest thing. Unless it's like, I mean, there's a million different versions of an 1176 compressor now. So you can pretty much pick any of them and get a sound that's going to be fine that you're after. I don't know why people still make different ones. Like, you know, people that I know still love the Waves CLA one, which is 10 something years old now, and it's completely fine. I mean, it's just everywhere. It probably doesn't. It sounds like good. It sounds really good, and I use it. I don't know, man. It's just funny.
Yeah, it's how many times can we? How good? It's the same with, you know, I guess hardware modeling for guitar amps. Like, how much better can you make the JCM 800 sound? You know, either do something that's based off it that's totally different, or, you know, we're really going to have like another just single amp plugin, like, you know, like that Tom Morello archetype.
Yeah, I did see that.
I mean, hey, their business model is obviously spend $50,000 on advertising, make $60,000 in sales. Like you've got, you know, like that's what hype marketing is, right? And they're very, very good at it. But hey, to their credit, it's not just like signature plugin for some prog metal guitar player. But, you know, I remember Tom Morello is the ultimate anti-gear guy. He's like, who cares? I'm really creative. I do weird stuff with gear, you know? Like the toggle switch thing, you know, if you don't learn it from Ace Frehley, you'll learn it from Tom Morello. And it's like, you sound like a DJ, or he sounds like he's scratching. Cool, man. This is your aesthetic. I saw heaps of people getting into him because it's like, you know, the politics side of it, which I was just like, hey, come on, like, why is this relevant? It's more just like, to me, it's funny because you've always just kind of said, none of this stuff matters, you know? And maybe that's the point. Hey, maybe you actually don't. But then again, why did they have to model his amp? Anyway, it's just a JCM 800, and it's the crap one as well. So maybe that's the point.
What is it, a 2205 or something?
I think so, yeah.
That's really funny.
I'm going to get some heat for that because I know a lot of people love the 2205 and 2210, but every time I pull out my 2210, it leaves me just wanting more. Maybe I don't fully appreciate it for what it is, but the last time I pulled it out, I realized the channel bleed on it is like the worst thing ever. So I'm very tempted to just ship that over to Jason and say, make it a 2203.
Can you do that with those amps?
That's the thing. Maybe, probably not. It's probably not even worth it because it's so heavy. But it's got the awesome old transformers and stuff like that. It's just, not for me. Whatever. Anyway, total.
Yeah.
Same thing with 1176 plugins and LA2As and, you know, tape. Maybe the tape saturation thing. It's like, there's who's that company, Baby Audio, where they do the like, you know, they're just kind of fun plugins where it's like, it's a parallel mixing thing, but it's got a cool interface, so you use it different. Or the Super VHS thing they do, and
I quite like that plugin. I use that a little bit. I have the delay, which is called, it's got a cool name. Comeback Kid, yeah. Which I bought that just because of the Midnight song, the song called Comeback Kid, yeah. But yeah, it's just a fucking delay. It's kind of like I got sucked into it because I thought the interface looked really cool, and I probably haven't used it in like 2.5, 3 years. It's just so easy to go back to what you know. I think the Super VHS one's different because the chorus in that's really cool. Although I think that's what it's called in that, or maybe it's the reverb's the wash section. But I find that kind of useful to just take a really bland sound and give it a bit more vibe. But yeah, just a delay. I don't know. But that's why I guess if anything, that's what you pay for. What you pay for is the presets within those delays, because I'm still, like, I'm pretty boring when it comes to dialing in effects. Part of me really struggles to understand what's okay. I know I say like everything's good and all that sort of stuff, but like, how much reverb should I really use? Is it going to be this much or this much? Because reverbs and delays, they can be such dominating sounds that they will just take over and cloud what the otherwise unaffected sound is. And I'm just always scared to push my luck with it. Particularly years ago, like even on drums and stuff, like what sounds cool to me as a snare reverb is like comes from liking 80s rock music, and that doesn't translate to everything, unfortunately. So you got to like squash, like put those feelings deep down, really squash them down, and think in a slightly more modern context. But people still use plenty of reverb on stuff. It's okay. And I guess it had a bit of a resurgence in the last 10 years, but yeah, I'm still a little bit scared sometimes.
I think the perception, I know for me, was like with reverb where it's like, don't use it because you only have to use a little bit and that's too much. Whereas in reality, like a Dokken snare is this much reverb when it just needs to be about that much reverb.
Yeah, the way that a lot of those 80s snares are made is kind of fascinating. I wish I kind of need someone from that era, like, to sit. I need to sit with them. I need to sit with Michael Wagner and say, please just show me how you did this. I think it's like this, but I'm not brave enough to do that. Do you know what I mean? I need someone to like hold me and tell me it's going to be okay. So
yeah, and who better than
Bob Clemountain, if you're listening.
Check. Hit us up, Bob. You've definitely got time in your life to just chat to us for a few hours about. So this specific snare at 3 minutes 33.
Have you watched any interviews with him?
Not really. No, I'm aware of the Bob though.
He is just the calmest man. He's just happy to be there. He always just looks like he's woken up.
He is a clear mountain.
Yeah, yeah, he totally is. No, it's like I've watched videos with him and he's just like rocking around in a CBGB shirt, just kind of like, this it's cool. It seems like a nice guy.
He's not like a Jack Joseph Puig fedora aesthetic thing.
No, he's I would love to talk to that guy about stuff, but man, I think he's too into gear.
That's a lot coming from us.
Yeah. I'm sort of less into studio gear these days. I feel like I've really, maybe even in the last couple of months of doing this with you, I just feel a bit more kinship with the guitar community than the pro audio community, because I feel like I can do everything with Pro Tools. These everything in the box, everything the software, all the effects I have. I'm just less inclined to want like hardware compressors and stuff. Like the ones I do have get used sparingly, because like I used to, like one thing I did, for example, in the Skies track was I would have compressed all the kicks and snares and all that sort of stuff going down and EQ'd it a bit. And I really just don't like doing that anymore, because the software versions I have, they're not necessarily better, but one thing that I like, I've got distressors in my rack there and they sound great on kicks and snares, and I've got DBX 160s and stuff and they sound really good on stuff too. But if I compress a snare drum by like, let's just say 8 to 10 dB, which is like a reasonable amount, but it has a certain character to it and sound, right? So I've always sort of been taught to get the sound going in, right? If you know you're going to compress that snare drum, just do it on the recording end and then it's done. And it's done with analog equipment, which, as we all know, theoretically is better than other stuff in quotation marks. But one issue is that if you've compressed your snare drum by 10 dB, then you've also brought the like noise floor up, or the spill up by 10 dB. So if you want to put a gate on there, all of a sudden it is so much more likely to be triggered by like stray, like tom hits or whatever. So like I've got the UAD distressor and that sounds amazing. I use that a lot. I use that on everything these days, actually. A lot on guitars. I didn't use it on your stuff, but like slightly cleaner guitars. I really like it on. But it's like, I can put the Sony Oxford drum gate on, which is my favorite gate for drums. It's in the name. Put that first. It cleans up all the spill pretty much to exactly what I want. And then I can compress it as much as I like without fear of it. Just,
That's actually the best explanation of it that I've heard, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, so much, I guess, of studio skills that are required and understanding signal flow is just maximizing the signal to noise ratio in your favor, right?
Yeah.
Like removing stuff you don't want. But then like guitar and guitar stuff is how much noise can you add? It is guitar noises, put cool stuff on and do this. And then you got to capture that, there's this.
But even still, like, if you're going to put a noise gate on, oftentimes you put that at the fucking starty signal chain, right? Like in the fractals and stuff. That's where it is, because you kill the noise so it doesn't get amplified later on the signal chain.
Exactly.
And,
exactly.
In terms of gating in studio, you can do it. Like you could put a patch of hardware gate in before, but then if it doesn't trigger on a very light sound, then that sound is not recorded. So you're stuffed.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm pretty sure on Here Today, like that, might have even been that song, there is so much ride spill in the snare drum, because I would have been doing like 20 dB of compression on that snare, thinking that's the way I had to do it. So I'm pretty sure it's that song. Yeah, trying to gate out and get like a clean, clear snare drum on that. Oh, if it's not that, it would have been All I Want. It was one of those two songs.
Right.
A title track from one of your early EPs.
Title of song.
But yeah, it was like impossible to do it. And it was just operator error. It's like fucking being 23, 24 and thinking you knew how to do everything. And in fact, just, you watch other people and you get like 80% of the information right and forget the other 20. And therefore you end up with something you don't like so much. So anyway, it's funny, man. I feel bad. This has been such a studio-centric episode. So hopefully people are still kind of
hopefully people just go and listen to the song and can listen to the sounds we made for it. So it's been really interesting to kind of go through this and, talk about the process. And it's obviously a big set of questions are like, oh, I know you like these things, but how do you actually record them, and how much of an impact does it have? So, I mean, even the fact that I could just record the solo at home, send it to you, forget about doing it, and then have you bring it up in the session and go, oh yeah, there it is, that's fine. And then, I've got the DIs. So if I want to like learn it properly, I can do that. But it's more a case of like, so I've had to spend the last couple of weeks like really A, learning the solo, then B, practicing it, standing up, and then C, we haven't played it live before. So I got to visualize how I'm going to do it and where I'm going to be and what buttons I have to press. There's this whole, I've learned the hard way. It's like, I'm going to play a new song and play the solo and be satisfied with it. There's all this other stuff that comes with it. So it's kind of been nice just to, there's the track. I can just listen to it, and then I can get the hard part out of the way, and then hopefully just get onto the semi-enjoyable part, which is playing it.
Yep. Learning it like a cover song, mate.
Exactly. It is just a cover song in my brain. I reckon it's taken until I was listening to it yesterday in the car again, and I've been through the however many stages of,
grief,
where it's like, now I'm okay with it. I'm like, yeah, there's some cool things on there, and I can listen to it and enjoy it as a song. And, I'm looking forward to playing it live, because look, I know we've taken up a lot of time. Before we go, people will hear it. There's a drum fill coming out of the.
Oh yeah.
There's a solo, then there's a riff, then there's a drum fill into the last chorus, which the phrase that was uttered, and this gets uttered a lot when we're arranging songs, more so than writing songs. It was like, we could do this, or you could do this. Then you could add this little thing that's really, really weird. What should we do? And we all go, yeah, people are going to find that weird. Oh, well, fuck people, we'll put it in. And then listening to it, years later, being like, why did we make that decision? So we've had to learn how to actually play that part.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's real weird. It's
real weird. We can do it. Well, we've been able to do it in rehearsal, like really consistently. So it's
How did you count it? How do you count it? You don't
literally just listen to the drums. But
you're not playing as a track, are you?
No.
So you just like Cam's going to do the fill, and then you guys just come in.
The fill, and we just do it.
Yeah.
And it's just
all right.
Watch us not do it live. That's kind of how these things often happen. But what helped for me is the pickup in the song, normally the chord plays a bit and then the first syllable lasts for one rhythmic unit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move to the next chord for the next syllable. So in that chorus, you just on that syllable play the chord once and then move. So that's how I've chunked it in my head. It's like I listen to the drums and I listen to the vocals and I know that I go with the chords just for that bit. So there's a real, once you've listened to the song a few times, you know what I mean. I'd encourage anyone to try and if anyone can figure out the exact chords that I'm playing, because it's a typical Dion thing where it's like just some power chords with a note on top that stays the same. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm looking forward to people hearing it and being like, oh yeah, cool. Sounds like Nickelback, bro.
Mate, one song sounds like Nickelback, one sounds like King's X. Who cares? Fuck people.
Well, I feel like we've done the Creed to Nickelback great circle of life. So anything else you want to add before we finish up today, Troy?
Well, look, mate, there's still 4 other songs in various states of completion, so hopefully they'll get done eventually. I think that song Nostalgia is really cool. There's videos
I think that's what we want to do next.
There's videos of Leon in the studio, like tracking the parts for that, which was really fun. But yeah, that'll be look out 2026.
Yeah, 2028. That one will be out.
Yep. But yeah, otherwise, man, it's been a cool convo. The episode with Charles will come out this week or next week or whenever. I'm not certain when this is going to go up. We're about a week ahead at the moment, just so everyone's aware. I think maybe it was the last episode that came out, but I made some comments about that's right. Last week's episode that came out, I think I said I was just getting Kalgoorlie and I'm sick, and I was like, oh, that was actually the week before that.
So you're feeling better?
I'm much better now. I'm all back to normal.
The Gear podcast timeline is very convoluted, but all that matters is that people enjoy listening and tuning in. So thank you to everybody again. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and leave your comments on the YouTube video or the podcast app that you're listening on, and we'll see you all next week. And go and listen to the new music that we made. You might like it, you might not.
If you don't,
doesn't matter.
Fuck you.
We enjoyed it. Yeah, exactly. See ya.